We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true.
And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is another episode of Those Were the Days, and we are fast forwarding from the 50s to the 70s, George.
Yes, 1974 Cup final. And, fans will recall, but it isn't our best moment in football history, but an important one in many ways, because there was so much about it that was right, apart from the result. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. 1 or 2 milestones. And first is the third round draw against Hendon, who were the prominent non-league club in the south of England that had just turned semi-professional and were making lots of noises in the south, and people putting a lot of pressure on to see if they could get them into the league proper. They were cock-a-hoop with a draw at Newcastle because it meant a lot of money. In fact, people later on will realise that on the back of these games against Newcastle United, they actually built a new stand at their ground. So, that's how important it was to them. Anyway, it's third round on the 5th of January 74. And, 32,000 turned up at St James's Park. And I think they thought that it was just there for the taking. It was through to the 4th round without much problem. But unfortunately for supporters, as always, Hendon dug in and fought like tooth and nail for every ball, and weren't going to give this one up easily. We went in the lead in 43 minutes, and Pat Howard, who was playing in defence that day, from a corner headed win the lead on 43 minutes just before half time. And again, I remember vividly in the Gallagher corner that everybody was just expecting a landslide in the second half, but it didn't come because Hendon, as I say, dug in and really give us lots to think about. Newcastle's side on the day was Liam McFall, David Craig, Alan Kennedy, Terry McDermott, Pat Howard, Tommy Gibb, Stuart Barraclough, Jimmy Smith, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor and Terry Hibbert. Quite a strong side, but still they couldn't make their way through the Hendon defence. It was lots of near misses and end-to-end stuff in some occasions, but the big thing was that Hendon packed the defence as as hard as they could. Their side was John Swannell in goal, Tony Jennings, Jerry Hand, Peter Deadman, Alan Phillips, Derek Baker, Bobby Childs, John Baker, two Baker brothers who went to Hendon from the Arsenal Academy, or equivalent of the Arsenal Academy. They were Arsenal reserves. Kieran Summers and Phil Fry. But they're regarded as a tidy side, and they certainly weren't going to give this game up easily. And lo and behold, typical Newcastle, midway through the second half, Hendon get a corner, and they leave their big centre half, Rod Hadder, unmarked, and bang, it's 1-1. And that's how it stayed to the end. Yes, it was back to the wall stuff for Hendon, but they held out and got themselves a replay, which in financial terms was for them was absolutely incredible. So on the Wednesday, the 9th, on the Wednesday night, we went to Hendon for the replay. And I think they may be, yeah, there it is. And 16,000 in the ground at that time, the biggest crowd it had in the ground. It was actually, sorry, that I'm misleading you. It wasn't the biggest crowd at their ground. It would have been, but they asked for permission to play the game at Watford at Vicarage Road, and that's where it was played. So nearly 16,000 went into the game, and Hendon fielded an unchanged side to the one that played at St James's, and we all thought it's going to be another tough one. Newcastle fielded an unchanged side. Sorry, not an unchanged side, but fitted in Frank Clark because of an injury, and to Tommy Gibb, and played Alan Kennedy in midfield rather than at fullback. So we had McFall, Craig, Kennedy, McDermott, Pat Howard, Frank Clark, Tommy Cassidy came in for another injury, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbert. Well, it was a different game altogether from the first game, in the sense that we went for it. No doubt Newcastle were up for this one, and in 14 minutes, a typical Malcolm MacDonald run and shot put us in the lead 1-0, and that's how it stayed till half time. The second half, we came out clearly buoyed up with the lead, and took the game to Hendon, and in 67 minutes, we got goal number 2 from a penalty when Malcolm MacDonald was brought to the ground in the penalty area, and Terry Hibbert took the penalty to make it 2. And then they hardly had time to respot the ball when Terry Hibbert scored another to make it 3. And then it really was back to the wall for Hendon. And Newcastle played a lot of great stuff, and a very deep cross from Terry Hibbert saw John Tudor do one of these diving headers to make it 4 and take me into the fourth round. Yeah, it harder game than we anticipated initially, but got the job done in the replay. So we go through to the next round, which is the fourth round, and that's again Scunthorpe at St James's Park. Now this is a third division side who we should have no problems dispensing with, but Newcastle being Newcastle, things don't always go our way. Anyway, we field with 38,000 in the ground. We field McFall, Craig, Kennedy, McDermott, Howard, Gibb, Barraclough, Smith, Jimmy Smith, Mark MacDonald, John Tudor, and Tommy Cassidy. And with that lineup, one would have thought they would have dispensed quite nicely with Scunthorpe. However, Scunthorpe had Jeffrey Barnard, Bruce Callard, Barry Lynch, Chris Simpson, Doug Wellborn, Keith Houghton, Stuart Philip, Neil Warnock is a name we might remember, still in football, and that's the same Neil Warnock that we talk about today, who's got a lot to say for himself, but a football character, there's no doubt about that. And in this game, he played centre forward against us. Nathan Keeley and Angus Davidson. Nathan Keeley was touted by some of the press that he could be a dangerous forward. And lo and behold, the press were right. The game kicked off, and it wasn't long before Scunthorpe put us under a bit of pressure. And on 7 minutes, the same Nathan Keeley dodged his way through the penalty area, left our defenders for dead, and on 7 minutes made it 1-0 to Scunthorpe. And after that, it was they just defended the goal, and whatever we did, there was no way it looked like we were going to get a goal before half time. And even after the half time whistle came out, they did make life difficult for us and just packed the defence. So there were lots of shots, but nothing actually going anywhere near defeating Barnard in the Scunthorpe goal. And the frustration in the crowd, particularly in the Gallagher corner, was palpable. You know, every shot, every push, every movement forward, the crowd were expecting something to happen. Well, it wasn't happening, so they got very, very frustrated. And it wasn't until just after the hour, a piece of magic by Terry McDermott. On the edge of the box, we got a free kick, and Terry managed to put it over the wall and into the far corner on 61 minutes to make it 1-1. Great, but the match had to be won then, and unfortunately, we just couldn't do it. We just kept banging away, and Scunthorpe just held out. And so the 38,000 went home with a draw for their entertainment, which didn't go down very well in the Gallagher corner. I remember I was disgruntled somewhere. I've got to say, I go on about the 10-minute flag. In this match, I can actually remember that suddenly, having been pushed around in the Gallagher corner, the 10-minute flag went down and so many people went home. It was quite slack. There was nobody pushing anybody. They were just glad to get out by the look of it. Anyway, ended up 1-1, and so Scunthorpe, like Hendon, took us to a replay, and so we go to the old showground at Scunthorpe, very old traditional football ground. Scunthorpe unchanged. Newcastle send McFall, Craig, Frank Clark, Terry McDermott, Pat Howard, Bob Moncur comes on the scene. Tommy Gibb, Jimmy Smith, Mark MacDonald, John Tudor, and Tommy Cassidy. And it's a side that should take Scunthorpe easily, but it's thinking like that got us into difficulty in the first game. However, it's clear we're going for it this time, and the pace of Barraclough and the skill of Hibbett, or Tommy Gibb and Jimmy Smith had just given Scunthorpe all sorts of problems, and it's no surprise on 10 minutes when Stuart Barraclough scores a typical Barraclough goal, outpaces the left side of their defence, and just runs into the penalty area and slots the ball underneath the Scunthorpe goalkeeper. And we relax a little bit, and it's clear from the way we're playing, much more confident in the first game, and we get the half time 1-0. In the second half, it's clear from the attitude of the Newcastle players that they're determined to finish this one off, and Malcolm MacDonald's on his best behaviour, running the legs off the centre backs and the full backs when he got the chance. And it's no surprise on 55 minutes when he makes it 2-0. And they hardly time to spot the ball when Malcolm repeats the dose with a drive from the edge of the penalty area that nearly takes the net off its standing to make it 3. So we get the 3-0, and the 19,000 in the old showground go home having seen quite an entertaining match, but not the score that the home side had been hoping for, but one that satisfied Newcastle and Joe Harvey's side quite pleasantly. So an entertaining game, and one that let the fans have a sigh of relief at how things were going. The next round we draw away again at West Bromwich Albion, and West Brom are in some difficulties. They come into this match just having been walloped 5-1 by Coventry City, one of their near neighbours in the Midlands, and it's something of a disaster for them. They're not a good time to come into this game. However, the big thing, and there's a picture from I didn't get a programme from West Brom, but that's a picture of Malcolm challenging the West Brom defence. We were wearing our pseudo Brazilian strip in that match, and West Brom with the traditional thick blue and white stripes. A crowd of 42,000 at the Hawthorns, which was regarded as quite good on the day. And of course, the West Brom manager at the time's worth a mention. It was Don Howe, the England World Cup fullback, who was the manager of West Brom then, which of course was his original side. And they fielded Peter Latchford, Gordon Nisbet as it was a Geordie, of course, Ray Wilson, Len Cantello, Willie Johnston, Asa Hartford, who was had come from West Brom's equivalent of the academy and had been playing for them since he was 17 and regarded as a really talented player, and he certainly was, Asa Hartford. And the centre forward, Tony Brown, was challenging for the England place. That's how good he was. And David Shaw and Alan Glover. Alan Glover, a very dangerous winger, but a Welsh player, and they were a tidy side, even though they were having a bad run. And of course, we went to the Hawthorns with McFall, Craig Clark, McDermott, Howard Moncur, Gabe Cassidy, MacDonald, Tudor, and Terry Hibbert, and side which one would have thought was good enough to cause West Brom lots of troubles. And sure enough, from the off, it was clear that Malcolm MacDonald had them scared witless. The centre-backs were running here, there and everywhere and just couldn't keep up with his pace. Now, added to the fact that down our right side and their left side, Stuart Barraclough was giving them a headache as well. So we really were in this match from the off. And I don't think it was any surprise to anybody in the ground that on 30 minutes, a beautiful deep cross from Terry McDermott found Malcolm MacDonald in the box, and he headed us on the half hour into a 1-0 lead, which we held quite comfortably till half-time. After half-time, it was clear that the Magpies wanted to finish this one off, and Stuart Barraclough had been giving them all sorts of headaches. Well, after half-time on 47 minutes, he gave them one more by making it 2-0 with a very, very sweet long run, and then just gliding the ball, almost passing the ball into the bottom of the net underneath the West Brom goalkeeper. And at that stage, it was clear West Brom heads had dropped, and so couldn't be anybody surprised that very soon after Barraclough's goal, there was another deep cross into the area, this time from David Craig, and in comes John Tudor from the left side, and one of these postmark diving headers, he makes it on 50 minutes, makes it 3-0, and that's how it stays to the end of the game, and back to the wall defence for West Bromwich after that. But a very comfortable and a very much appreciated fifth round win by the Gallowgate faithful, and the one which was thoroughly deserved. So the next round is the sixth round, and we're drawn to one of our a cup rivals who we over the years have had some fascinating games with, Nottingham Forest. And they come to St James's with a good record. They're reputed, well, not reputed, they're definitely playing good football and causing all sorts of bother in the league. And they come with their manager's Alan Brown, who's a former player of theirs, Jim Barron in goal, a Geordie, who they got from Wolves, Liam O'Kane at fullback, Irish international, John Winfield, Bob Chapman, David Sorella, George Lyle, Duncan McKenzie, who's a very, very tricky centre forward, made his name initially at Forest, but then really made his name with Everton later on. And Neil Martin O'Neill was a name that should be familiar to people, because he eventually becomes the manager and a star player for ages, and Ian Bowyer, and that's a very, very talented Forest side. Newcastle go to put out Ian McFall, David Craig, Frank Clark, Terry McDermott, Pat Howard, Bob Moncur, Stuart Barraclough, Jimmy Smith, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbert. And the thing that I noticed in that setup is that we're actually starting to form a team that's certainly a forward line that's almost a fixture, being picked by Harvey every week. The interest, of course, has now risen. It being a quarter final, 54,500 at St James's, and they witnessed quite an interesting game. On 3 minutes, Ian Bowyer for Forest just leaves our defence standing, and with a 1-2 with Duncan McKenzie on 2 minutes, and Forest are 1-0 in the lead. And we, as I say, that you can hear the moans in the Gallowgate corner, out loud almost. And then David Craig, who didn't score many goals for Newcastle, scored a peach of a goal in this one. a corner from the right side. It got played out to David on the edge of the box, and he returned it with a cracking shot to make it 1-1. And sighs of relief all round. Looked like everything was going well. And then 41 minutes just before half time, Liam O'Kane, another Irish player for Forest, heads in from a corner to make it 2-1 to Forest. And that's how it stayed at half time. We come out after half time, and Forest are giving us all sorts of problems. And George Lyle steps up to take a penalty after Bob Monk had handled the ball in the area and makes it 3-1 to Forest. So it looks like we're on our way out of the cup. But on 68 minutes, we get a penalty for a handball by a Forest defender and upsets Terry McDermott to make it 3-2. There's excitement all around. You know, they can feel the energy in the crowd wanting things to happen. And on 71 minutes, lo and behold, who should do it but John Tudor makes it 3-3, and the place erupts. Well, it doesn't just erupt. Hundreds, if not thousands, of kids from the Leazes end decided to celebrate by running all the way down to the Gallagher end, and it's quite a lot at the Gallagher end decided to go the other way. So the pitch was absolutely covered with kids and all sorts of problems in the crowd, and they ended up bringing police dogs and all kinds of things to try and sort it out. But it was labelled as St James's Park riot. But my memory is it was mostly kids, and I know, Steve, you were there, and there's the players looking on at them getting them off the pitch. It's anyway. They take them off for a while and come back on and restart the game, and within just before the final whistle, Bob Monker steps up at a corner and makes it 4-3. However, that's not the end of the story. It's the Forest protest to the FA, and the FA do something they've never done before and haven't done since, and they decide to expunge the match from record altogether. Not just make him replay, but not only replay, but the match becomes null and void, which is it never happened before, and I don't think it's happened since, because of the so-called St James's Park riot, with the Forest players claiming that they felt threatened and upset and all the rest of it. Well, all of that went before the FA, and so they just expunged the match from records, which is amazing. So it's still, if you dig deep enough there, as I had to for this one, it's still there in the history of football. But beside it has this unusual word void against it, which has never happened before and never happened since. So we end up having to replay the game, but the game is replayed at a neutral venue, not at St James's Park. It's replayed at Goodison Park and Everton's ground. And so we take 41,000 on the Monday night at Goodison Park, and we take McFall, Clark, Kennedy, McDermott, Pat Howard, Bob Monker, Tommy Kidd, Jim Smith, Mark McDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. And the emergence on the subs bench of a young man called Keith Robson, who was to have a very short but very noisy career with Newcastle United. So that's how we went. Forest went with similar team to the one that played in the first game. In fact, it was identical. They didn't make any changes at all, and they were clearly up for it, and that's a picture from Goodison Park, and it was a decent match, but nobody could score. It was end-to-end stuff, but it ended up 0-0, and had to be another replay. And so, in their wisdom, the FA decided, well, all right, it'll stay at Goodison Park. And so on the Thursday night, they had the second go, another go at settling this game, and we sent an unchanged team, as did Forest, and we had another entertaining match, which really needed something special to sort it out, and the something special was the picture that Steve showed before. Actually, it's from this match where Malcolm MacDonald, on half an hour, scores a beautiful goal after a nice long run, where he left the Forest defence trailing in his wake to make it 1-0. And that's how it stayed till the end of the game. 33,000 at Goodison Park, and to solve the Battle of St James's Park, after two replays at a neutral ground, we end up going through to the semi-final of the cup. Now, the semi-final of the cup is on 30th of March, and we're drawn against Burnley, who'd fought their way through in the other half of the draw. The Burnley side, managed by Jimmy Adamson, a Geordie from Ashington. That's the semi-final ticket, which was at Hillsborough, which was a traditional semi-final ground, and one which we used to like. We used to seem to have to look at Hillsborough. Anyway, Jimmy Addison, Geordie from Ashington, is the manager, but there are lots of others in the team. The goalkeeper Stevenson, Peter Noble, John Dobson, Jimmy Thompson, Frank Casper, and others from up here. But the big threat with Burnley was Leighton James, their Welsh winger. He was a flyer and could shoot from almost anywhere on the pitch and cause you trouble. And we went with McFall, Craig Clark, McDermott, Pat Howard, Bob Moncur, Tommy Gibb, Jimmy Smith, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. And what an interesting game it was. I remember this is a game which I've spoken to at length with Malcolm MacDonald about. And Malcolm remembers it as I do, and as people in my family who were there do as well. And isn't it Burnley actually tore us apart in the first half. The only thing that Burnley didn't do in the first half was score. And we were struggling. And when we got into the second half, it seemed to be going the same way. But then suddenly a piece of magic by two of our stars, Terry Hibbett, who could put the ball on a sixpence, got a free run at a ball, and without stopping the ball, played a first time pass through the middle of the field. And who did he hit? But a very, very fast running Malcolm MacDonald. And suddenly the match was turned on its head as Super Mac slid the ball into the bottom of the net on 65 minutes. And suddenly, having been battered by Burnley, we were 1-0 in the lead, much to the delight of the Geordie faithful. Burnley kept having a go at us, but we resisted quite strongly. But then, as the game wore on, they got more desperate to press us, and left another little crack. And guess what? The Terry Hibbert, Malcolm MacDonald skill set repeated itself, and Hibbert put Malcolm through again to run through from just the edge of the penalty area to this time just pass the ball into the bottom of the net underneath the Burnley goalkeeper, Alan Stevenson. So 2-0 at 75 minutes. There's no way Newcastle are going to give that game up with at that stage of events. And so he left Hillsborough with a very satisfying 2-0 victory. And in a game which most pundits were quite surprised at, because there's no question, and as I say, even speaking to Malcolm MacDonald, he said that he couldn't understand how Burnley could lose that game when they had it was there for the taking, particularly in the first half. He recalls a number of shots from people like Leighton James and others who could so easily have taken the game away from Newcastle. But the fact that they didn't, and the fact that we had people like Malcolm and Terry Hibbert who were experienced enough to know that it only takes one goal, and that was it. So a nice 2-0 victory against Burnley, and we're off to the FA Cup final at Wembley. And coming through the other semi-final was Liverpool, of course. And there's the final ticket. That was the first final of this era that my father didn't attend. He'd been to all the others, but he couldn't get to this one. He was he was tied up in something special where he worked. There's the programme, and it's the squad. That's basically the side that played, but there was all sorts of controversy before the match. Liverpool were paid something like 25 grand fee. Newcastle, I gathered from Malcolm, was paid about 5 grand fee. Liverpool got beautiful new grey blazers and beautiful new red tracksuits and strips to go on to Wembley. Ours went out in the strips with that gaudy violet and yellow tracksuit top, which Stan Seymour happened to have at the back of his shop. Had been ordered for a girls' netball team, and that's why they didn't wear any legs, because the legs were all too tight for the players to wear. But they wore those dreadful tops, which I know they didn't enjoy very much, and they didn't look very good either. But that was, and there's the toss up with the referee at the beginning of the match, and Princess Anne was the dignitary with Emlyn Hughes, the Liverpool captain, meeting the Liverpool players. I couldn't find, and there she is before they step out onto the pitch with her husband, Mark Phillips. I couldn't find a picture of her shaking hands with the Newcastle team in their gaudy violet tracksuit tops. And so we entered into a difficult game. But the controversies in this match didn't stop there. Even before the game, I think there's a picture, Steve, of them in their suits. Maybe it's further through. Yeah, there they are. That's the cup final suits for Newcastle in black velvet, would you believe? You know, Liverpool got beautiful blazer suits in the very best cloth with badges on their blazers. Newcastle weren't going to get suits until a tailor shop on Northumberland Street called the 20 shilling Tailors, and I can remember them because I've been dragged there by my mother to get new clothes. Decided that they would offer as a sponsored deal the Newcastle players suits made of this black velvet. Well, apparently they'd had this roll of velvet in the storeroom from a previous time that nobody wanted to buy. So they decided to get rid of it by offering free suits to the Newcastle team. It looks smart enough. I can't imagine how it lasted though, black velvet for a man's suit, but never mind. There they are, looking quite smart. That's the one thing I never asked Malcolm about, how he felt about his black velvet suit. So we go to Wembley, and Liverpool have got Ray Clements, Tommy Smith, Alex Lindsay, Thompson, Cormac, Hughes, Kevin Keegan, Brian Hall, Steve Highway, a very talented player, John Toshak, a big bustling forward, very dangerous forward, and Ian Callaghan, a small winger who was very, very quick and very, very, very talented. Obviously 100,000 in the ground, and at that time still the club's only getting 15,000 tickets each. Now when you remember that out of that Newcastle were taking, it took nearly 2,000 for staff and other players. That suddenly reduced it to just over 10,000 to 12,000 for the fans. So we grumbled this last year at the Carabao Cup because we only got 30,000 tickets. Goodness knows what would done if we'd been still running under those rules. And our side was McFall, Clark, Kennedy, McDermott, Monkers, Jimmy Smith, Tommy Cassidy, Malcolm MacDonald, John Tudor, and Terry Hibbett. Worst thing to say to you all is that we lost 3-0. Kevin Keegan, 7 minutes. Steve Highway, 74 minutes. Kevin Keegan, 88 minutes. And the worst thing about it all is, and I think Malcolm MacDonald would accept, we just didn't turn up. We got to a final and we just weren't there. I remember watching it on television and seeing Joe Harvey on the touchline trying to urge the players forward, and then switching to Shankly on the touchline, and he was waving his arms about, telling the Liverpool players to do it this way, that way, and all the other way, just generally showing off in the way that Bill Shankly could. There's no doubt they took us apart. And there's the end with Keegan and Clark congratulating each other. And you can see by Frank Clark's face how he feels about it, because they just didn't turn up. And that's the last occasion that we used the City coat of arms on the shirts at the final or anywhere else. Because after that match, and there's Shankly enjoying the victory, after that match, the City Council wrote to the club and said in future, if they wanted to use the coat of arms as the badge, they would have to pay. And I think the club did the right thing and said to the council, well, all right, you can stick your badge up your jumper. And there's Malcolm MacDonald amongst the Marine band, just standing there ruefully, just wondering what had happened, because he had a lot of weight on his shoulders. He was the man that was going to win it for us. I think that's what fans really felt. But even he struggled to get into this game. Liverpool just swamped us. A fan that got over exuberant and decided to join the celebrations on the pitch.
That's Phil Thompson, isn't it?
Oh God, it is. I thought it was a fan. It's not. It's Thompson with a Newcastle strip on and a hat. And well, I don't know why he's probably the police just protecting him then, because yes, you're right, Steve. Sorry, that's a good spot. I missed that. Missed that completely. And the cup being presented in the usual way, and with all things changing at the FA, no Sir Stanley Rouse this time. It had all changed to new hierarchy who took things on. But and the Twin Towers, I mean, that's something people who nowadays probably don't even remember the Twin Towers, but I certainly do. And it was a landmark that we love to see. It was so important that you walked up Wembley Way and there were the Twin Towers waiting to greet you. It was fascinating. And then the homecoming. That's the homecoming. And now, again, I talked to Malcolm MacDonald about this. Malcolm MacDonald, and anybody can ask him, I know Steve probably has, admits freely that he was in tears on that bus. And I think his words to me were, well, he says his words on the bus were, what on earth would have done if we'd won? This is us losing. What would they have done if we'd won? And I know that stayed with Malcolm and still does very much, the reception they got when they came home. Because there were many who think that we had a much bigger and better reception in Newcastle as losers than Liverpool did as winners. And we saw the repeat of that with our Carabao win. It was just amazing that, you know, it all repeats itself. But it was the same in the 50s as well. So we always seem to be able to get a celebration going when we want to. But I know that particularly stuck in Malcolm MacDonald's mind and heart, that it brought him to tears to think that they were the losers and look what the fans were doing. And that's Malcolm's words. What would they have done if we had won? But we just didn't turn up on the day, sadly.
Great stuff, George, as always. I think we are going to have a look at the next FACup finals, which, of course, were in the 1990s, George. Newcastle did have to wait a considerable amount of time to get to Wembley in the 90s.
Well, before that, I'm hoping to be able to do the FACup final.
Great stuff. Great stuff.
No, that's in the near future, but we'll go on to the others. Yeah.
Great stuff, George. As always, thanks very much,
Thanks,
mate.
Steve.
I'll play out with the adverts. Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks all.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach. All excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or tynetheatre and operahouse.uk.